Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Drew Lehman. I am very excited to be here at this conference with you and to tell you about our journey towards self-service analytics on Hadoop at Comcast. At Comcast, my title is Director of Advanced Technology Solutions. I'll give you a little bit of background on Comcast. So we are a multiple service operator, or MSO. We have multiple lines of business within our organization, including high-speed internet service. We have an Emmy-winning video platform called X1. We have home security and automation services, and we have IP telephony services as well. We're one of the largest telecom companies in the country. We also own NBC Universal, which has several media properties, including Universal Studios theme parks. We are certainly operating at large scale. We have tens of millions of customers. We have a network that has hundreds of millions of devices on it. It is no challenge for us to be dealing with large data sets and problems of scale. Part of my charter for my group is around engineering analysis. We have a team of analysts within the organization that their charter is to take data and turn it into budget guidance, forecasting of usage on our network, forecasting of our services, and also we give engineering and product teams engineering design guidance about how best to do things like design a content delivery network for IP video. And all of this is driven by data. We need to have information in order to make good decisions for our business, how to best direct our capital spend in order to operate our business as efficiently as we possibly can. So as we journey towards self-service analytics, I'd like to give you a little analogy, if I can, about native habitats. So when I was younger, I had a great experience where I got to go to South Africa to visit a family friend. And we actually went on safari and got to see elephants. We're at the Hadoop Summit, right? So there's got to be elephants. In their native habitat. And I have this one memory that I specifically remember of this elephant who is in a state called must, where his testosterone levels, they spike to about 60x what they normally are. And so this enraged elephant was tearing apart a tree and then chased us in our Land Rover as we got away. And this was an experience that never have in a zoo, right? Never experience that unless you see the animal in their native habitat. And my point was like that in some ways, you know, that animal was alive and it's in the place where it was kind of meant to be. And as we look at the elephants drinking from the data lake here, think about that. So the analogy is really not trying to say that analysts are animals, but the native habitat of analysts is spreadsheets. We work with lots of analysts, and really, as we try and get them involved in different technologies, they really just want to pull the data back into a spreadsheet, right? And munge it in Excel. And so we've tried to fight the analysts, right? But really, to have an analyst in all their glory, they need to be in spreadsheets, right? And so this is one of our lessons learned, right? Is let people exist in their native habitat. So I'll walk you through kind of our evolution throughout history here of kind of how we started off in a self-service analytics environment, and then we went away from that, and now we're back there, right? And so we started out with people just using Excel spreadsheets on their laptop, right? And then we moved to this environment of using a database like a SQL Server and a reporting tool like SSRS. And then we evolved to something like Vertica with Tableau. And now the state that we're at is using Datameer on top of Hadoop and still using BI tools like Tableau. And I'll dive into each one of these and talk about kind of the pros and cons of them, right? So as we started out, Analysts, data in Excel spreadsheets, this was kind of ideal, right? They're actually self-serving, they're holding the keys to their own destiny. But there's some limitations here, right? As we look at this, Excel has a limitation, 1 million rows, right? And even before you get to 1 million rows, I think the experience starts to degrade, right? And so this is not even medium data, this is small data. And using data in Excel is generally not collaborative. There's tools like Box and things like that where you can share files, but there's locking issues, there's contention and all that stuff. And basically what people end up doing is not automated and not repeatable. When we were in this phase of our life, basically an analyst would be working towards a budget for the next year, and then they'd submit it, and then the next year would roll around and they'd say, let's start over, right? Let's get the data and let's start over, and we'll just do it all again. So definitely not automated, not repeatable. So as we entered into the next phase of our evolution, right, this was basically saying the technology solution did not scale. So we had to go to something else. So it was a database, right? So SQL Server is a great technology, but it's really limited to one compute node. You can have a hot backup, but really, at most, I believe, based on the documentation I've read, is that it can handle about 10 terabytes on like a SAN to process, but you've got limited compute, right? Because it's really not a distributed query engine. And we've introduced this thing now, which is this IT handoff, right? Which is that the analysts don't speak SQL. They're not experts, right? So you need to have somebody kind of hold their hand and get them the cut of data that they need so that they can get it back into their spreadsheet and do what they need to do. And so we've formed this like consultative service within our organization where we basically have to help the analysts do their job with technology. Definitely not self-service, right? And the next phase was, well, that single node compute didn't work, so now we need a distributed compute data store, and we went with Vertica. And this was a good step because it got us clustered storage, it got us clustered compute, columnar compression. It was all improvements, right? But still we have these IT handoffs because this is even a more specialized technology that requires IT consultative service again. But we've gotten ourselves to being able to handle hundreds of terabytes now. So we're into large data, certainly. But some of the limitations of Vertica at our scale led us into a situation where now we have silos of data focused around product verticals. And so there's limitations as far as what we can do in that space, right? So specifically in my industry, we're seeing all of our products converge on IP, right? High-speed data is certainly IP, video is IP, IP telephony is IP, home security, automation, all that stuff is IP. We'd like to be able to do analysis across all of it. With this type of infrastructure, we don't really have that capability. So the next step in our evolution was moving to Hadoop, and specifically with Datameer as well. We're at a Hadoop conference. A lot of you know that the benefits of Hadoop: clustered storage, columnar compression as well, clustered compute. And one of the big advantages is it liberates your data, right? So when we had our data in Vertica, to some degree, Vertica was holding our data hostage. You had to go through their query engine in order to do anything. Within the Hadoop infrastructure, you benefit from the entire ecosystem of tools. Specifically, Datameer got us back to self-service because what Datameer is it's a tool that exposes your data sets in Hadoop in a spreadsheet-like interface through a web browser. And some of you are probably saying, that sounds crazy. There's no way you can expose my petabyte file in a web browser that'll crash Chrome, right? And you're right, you can't do that. But the way that Datameer works is it takes a 5,000 row sample, representative sample of your data. It allows you to manipulate that data in the web browser through the spreadsheet interface. Do what you want to do. Filtering, aggregations, sessionization, binning, some really complex analytic functions as well. And then when you're done doing that with the 5,000 row sample, you hit save, and it submits a job to your cluster and runs the logic that you expressed through your spreadsheet interface across the entire data set. And then when it's done, you can view it again through that spreadsheet interface. So it's not exactly Excel, but it's putting the analysts back in their native habitat, right? Where they can actually, they feel comfortable. They understand their way around that environment, right? And so this got us to the point where, since we're on Hadoop, we're now at petabyte scale and beyond. Hadoop scales beyond that, right? And we don't have that IT handoff anymore. We've been able to kind of, to some degree, abandon that consultative service that we had within our organization and allow analysts, subject matter experts to get into the data and get the results that they want. So we've accelerated the path to insights as well. So within Comcast, Datameer has been deployed in a couple different stacks within our organization, both on top of Hortonworks as well as Cloudera. We also have it deployed actually on top of Hortonworks, on top of OpenStack, and that allows us to scale our compute and our storage independently, which is kind of an un-Hadoopy thing to do, but kind of a really cool thing to do. And I'd love to talk to anybody about that at another time, and also as well in bare metal clusters as well. And so we have firsthand experience knowing that this stuff works. So at this point, I'd like to talk to you about a couple use cases, right, of how we've seen value derived from this technology stack. And I'll give you a little disclaimer here in that since we're no longer in this consultative service, I'm conveying this stuff to you almost secondhand, right? In that, I'm not the analyst doing this work, but I've gone out and shopped among the customers who are now using Datameer within our organization and said, hey, what kind of value are you getting from using this, and what are some of the successes, right? And so I'm going to focus specifically on IP telephony, which I mentioned before. Within Comcast, we call this line of service Comcast Digital Voice. And as I mentioned before, Comcast is actually one of the largest telephone operators in the country. This is a complex business. It involves wholesale of minutes on our network. It involves peering relationships with other network providers. It involves managing a network of complex infrastructure. And all of that, for the business to do that, they rely on data to drive all the decisions that they're making in that space. The other thing that I should mention is that all the work that we do with data is done in compliance with all the security and governance requirements for our industry. We take that very seriously and adhere to that. And this slide is meant to indicate, not to teach you about IP telephony, but meant to really convey that IP telephony is pretty complex. It's a very deep engineering discipline, right? And we have people who work on these systems. They know all about session border controllers, media gateways, IMS, all of this stuff in intricate detail. And in my mind, it seems overly complex, this stuff. And so historically, back when we were in that consultative service, we would interact with subject matter experts in the IP telephony field, and they would give us these ridiculous requirements, like of what they wanted, a report, and to have IT people who know data, they know databases, they know reporting and all of this stuff, but have no idea about this type of domain knowledge, understand the requirements, implement it correctly, and be able to hand it back that just wasn't happening, right? We were getting not just handoffs, we were getting iterations back and forth because not only did we not understand the requirements right, but then once the customer saw what they got, they said, oh, I forgot to mention I wanted this or that, right? And the reason that was happening was they weren't getting instantaneous feedback, right? And so we ended up in this really inefficient loop of how we're operating with them. And so we identified IP telephony as a really low-hanging fruit, big ROI opportunity for us to let these subject matter experts into the data that they understand deeply to get value out of it. So in this next slide, this is a screenshot. It's really, I'm sure, difficult to read, but you get the idea that this is interface to Datameer. There's a new version of Datameer that actually has an even prettier interface than this. But these are anonymized call detail records shown through the Datameer interface. And I want to tell you about something that happened, and this is kind of a fairly simple single data source use case in which there was some data discovery that took place that actually ended up producing some value. What happened was, as an analyst was looking at this data set, which is fairly large, it's several terabytes a month of data that comes in, they were working with this, getting instantaneous feedback. There's a feature within Datameer that's called the flip side, where you can basically flip your spreadsheet over and get summary statistics around the data sets, the min, max, the average, the cardinality, and things like that. And basically, what the subject matter expert found was that they found that there was a spike in usage within with a high cost area, which I believe is IP telephony speak for like international calling and things like that. And so they thought to themselves, this seems strange, and they formulated a hypothesis around why they thought this might mean within the data, right? And again, this is something that, given the way that we were working previously, they never would have had access to view this. And their hypothesis was, hey, perhaps there's network abuse going on, right? Because it's strange to see such a large spike in high-cost areas. What I mean by this is someone who's violating the terms of service in their relationship with us and doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. And so they used Datameer to do some aggregation and to look at this, and they were able to prove their hypothesis and found that there were a handful of accounts that were actually driving almost all of this usage in high-cost areas. And so using Datameer, they were able to not only identify this pattern of this issue, but they were able to then automate the process that they had just gone through. They were able to basically create an automation of a Tableau data extract that got pushed into Tableau server and create visualizations on top of it. Datameer has the ability to do visualizations itself if you want to use that. We have widespread adoption of Tableau within our organization. It's just kind of considered the standard for dashboarding and reports, and so that's what we use. But they made this into an automated, repeatable thing so that they could keep track of any of these issues that occur in the future. So the result for this use case was that we detected this abuse. The analyst was empowered to do it themselves. We saved resources for the company. We didn't have an IT handoff. It's automated and repeatable, and all of that sums up to value for our organization through self-service analytics. I'm going to switch to a second use case now, which is a pretty different use case. And this one focuses around something that we're still working through, but it involves a couple different groups. And this one is around network engineering, IP video engineering, and engineering analysis. And the idea here is that we want to make sure that customers are having a great experience, right? Especially when it comes to experiencing IP video, which is, seems to be a growing trend within industry and society, right? And not only do we want them to have a great experience when they're watching Xfinity content, but any sort of content, as we provide the high-speed internet service as well. So whether it's ours or someone else's, it doesn't matter. We want them to have a great experience. And so one of the issues is, how do we measure customer experience as it relates to IP video? This is a challenge, right? And it's a challenge because there are millions of viewing experiences all the time, right? And if you know anything about how IP video works, a 2-hour video is broken up into 5-second chunks of video so that players can do things like adaptively shift bit rates based on the connectivity speed that they're experiencing. And so if you look at the data that there is around that, you've got basically information for every 5-second chunk of video that people watch. And so what we really want to do is understand what type of quality of experience people are having. Things like buffer stalls, right? How long does it take for the video to start? How long does it take for the buffer to fill up at the beginning? There's all types of things that we want to understand about how our infrastructure, how our high-speed internet services is impacting people. And you may say, well, why do you want to know this, right? Well, the answer is we want to fix it, right? We want to manage our network. We want to manage our infrastructure. We want to allocate our capital such that we can provide customers with an experience that they're just delighted with constantly. And one of the challenges in being an MSO, I think, has been that when you operate a network, a lot of times you're focused on operating a network and you try and manage the network to network metrics, right? So you're thinking, we need to look at network utilization, and we just want to make sure network utilization is good, and we're going to deploy our gear based on network utilization. And this is kind of another lesson learned from analytics is make sure you're operating towards the right KPIs, right? Because if you're managing towards network utilization, you may have a network that you're really proud of, your network metrics, but you may have customers who are not having a good experience, right? So this is one of the things that we've realized is our KPI that we need to be looking at is what's the end experience for the customer. And so in this use case within Datameer, the thing I want to emphasize is this is a little bit different one because you've got multiple different data sets, right? This is a data blending use case where, we have certain information about QoS within our own network, right? But we don't have information about everything, right? So we've we've engaged some third parties to get kind of more comprehensive data sets. And then we've got some in-home QoS metrics as well. And so in order to get kind of a comprehensive view of the user's experience, we've leveraged Datameer to do this blending, to join these data sets, large data sets together. And our end goal is really to get metrics around our network so that we can intelligently allocate our capital spend in order to make customer experience better. making customer experience one of our best, making it our best product is a major strategic goal for Comcast, and I'm going to talk more about that tomorrow. But that's the end output of kind of this process here is we're getting improved QoE KPIs, and ultimately our goal is to have improved NPS scores for our customers as well, which is Net Promoter Scores. How many people would promote our business to others? And so like I was saying, we're using Datameer to do all this blending. We're doing analysis along the way and then sharing insights through visualizations, right? And really what this comes down to is this is all done by analysts, right? Without IT help, they're getting into the data, they're able to pull these data sets in, they're able to do all of this and quickly prototype, explore these data sets, figure out correlations, understand information about the data sets, what is highly correlated with customer experience, so that we can better understand how to operate our network. And so the end result of this use case is that we are improving customer experience. We are, again, empowering our analysts. We're directing our capital spend intelligently. We're not doing that IT handoff. And again, repeatable, automated value to the organization all across the board. And so for us, Hadoop in itself, as well as Datameer, have been key pieces of our self-service analytics story. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has. Yes?
So do you find that you need to curate, and it seems like you didn't because you said no IT handoff, but
yeah.
I think about our data, and it's kind of messy.
Yeah.
So do you find you need to curate some subject areas before your analysts get into them, or they're each coming up with their own key metrics that have the same names but different calculations under them or whatever?
Sure. So the question, if people couldn't hear, was about curation of data quality. Basically, are we throwing analysts at raw data sets versus curated ones? And I think it depends on the use case, right? So Datameer can be a great tool for discovering data quality issues, right? Because it does get you right in there. It gives you the profiling, the statistics. We have found data quality issues just by using that as a tool. But obviously, you want to ensure that you have curated data sets. So yes, there's still an IT effort to make sure that you have quality data before the analysts get into it. But at that point, basically, given that you have the appropriate governance in place in the sense that people understand what the data means, right? Obviously, you don't want people making assumptions about what the data is. But at that point, the analysts who are subject matter experts on the data should be able to service themselves. Yeah. You, yeah.
Does Datameer interact with data catalogs to find the right data sets? So how do they analyze the data?
Yeah, so Datameer can interact with a bunch of different systems, but specifically the Hive Metastore it can interact with and basically pull data from Hive. You can pull files. There's a whole bunch of connectors. I'm probably not the best person to answer that, but the Datameer guys have a booth, and they'd be, I'm sure, more than happy to answer that for you. So you're right there, yeah.
So do you have a separate data lake for the analytical uses?
So the question is, do we have a separate data lake for analytic uses? So we do have multiple data lakes, but they're not specifically allocated around uses presently. It's more around organizationally how they're allocated.
So your data analysts, they can access almost all the lakes using data.
So Datameer, one installation of Datameer can only talk to one cluster presently. But they, assuming that they have access, they can, and Datameer basically, as far as access controls, uses the underlying access controls of the HDF HDFS file system, right? So if you want to restrict access on a user basis, it'll bubble through to Datameer. Yeah.
How do you operationalize? I mean, yes, it's a good thing that I can go find a nugget that I kind of worked on today, but I want to then turn it into production and I want to run it consistently. How do you guarantee SLAs? How do you protect against users running too much and slowing and affecting everybody working in that environment?
That's a good question. So the question was around how you productionalize, guarantee SLAs, and make sure that jobs don't impact other users. Operationalizing, they have their own scheduling system, right? If you're not happy with that, you can obviously basically use Datameer to prototype and then implement in something else if you wanted to. The SLAs don't have a good answer for that one. The impacting other users, the one thing I would say is Datameer has a feature called Smart Execution, where they basically pick intelligently what execution engine to use, be it MapReduce, Tez, Spark, based on the data size and the complexity of what you're doing, and try and reduce the amount of resources in the cluster that you're using based on what you're trying to do. So in some ways, you may cause less impact on the cluster by using Datameer versus just kind of always having a go-to play, which is, I'm going to implement a Spark job or something, right? So like if your data is bigger than what fits in memory, Spark may not be the best choice. So, that you just kind of get that out of the box with them.
Do you throttle your users?
Do we throttle our users? So, my experience within Hadoop has been that we have used queues, which is effectively throttling, right? And so in certain environments, that is the case, yeah, where we have queues and, yeah. Yep, yes.
So you had Datameer on top of Cloudera and Hortonworks. Is there a business reason, technical reason for having two environments?
So right now we don't have a top-down dictation as far as which vendor is supported. Within the organization, teams have made their own decisions as far as who to work with, and that there isn't to my knowledge a technical reason why teams have picked one versus the other. So, anyone else? One back there, yeah.
Quick question, Mark. So there's no handover to IT anymore.
Can you talk louder? Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, there's no handover to IT anymore. What does the IT big data department do these days? Where do you draw?
Yeah. So honestly, this has freed us up to explore new things, right, and to kind of shop for more work within the company. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit tomorrow as far as other things that my team are engaged on. But actually, we've found ways to contribute to our goal of improving customer experience, right? And so we're using big data to provide other capabilities, enabling lots of operational use cases within the organization. And so, that's kind of one of the exciting things is, we're not holding analysts' hands anymore, but we're off adding value in other areas. So,
Well,
yeah.
you guys must still be involved with the ingest and blending side of things, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, as we're involved in ingest too, we've been focusing on real time as well. So, yes.
So you mentioned you took into consideration security and governance initially. Are you treating all of your clusters the same from that perspective, or is it varying based on use case or user group, or some other variable?
Yeah, so the question is around security and governance, and are we treating all of the clusters the same? So I think the answer to treating all the clusters the same is no, because they don't all exist within the same organization. But they all are subject to the same security organization, right? So, I can't speak to what every single cluster is doing because I'm not responsible for all of them, right? But yeah, we're all working with the same security organization to make sure that we're in compliance. Mm-hmm. Yes.
You say you can, using Datameer, you can view 5,000 rows or records?
Yes, so the question is around using Datameer, how many records can you view in the web browser? And by default, it's 5,000 rows, yeah.
Because on Excel, it's like 1 million.
Yes.
So is it better to use Excel?
So the question is, in Excel, you can use 1 million. In Datameer, that sample is just in order for you to express the logic, right, and get instantaneous feedback. When you're done, you click Save, and it goes off and runs it against the entire data set, which resides in HDFS, and then pulls the results back into that web browser. So I'd say no, it's definitely not better than Excel. Or sorry, Excel is not better. Yeah, got that backwards. Backwards. So, anybody else? Cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming.